Ag Life, presented by ADM Lloydminster.
Hello again and welcome to Ag Life. I'm Gerard Lampow. On the menu, I chat with a woman who's heading up the cattle feeding both provincially and nationally. Saskatchewan producers can benefit from a new tax credit, and top-notch farming is coming to Lloydminster. Also, if you've never seen License to Farm, well, we got her. Chapter 1 of License to Farm is on the menu. But first, the water that we drink needs to be protected at every stage of its usage. I get some insight on saving this resource for the future.
So this is our groundwater model, and it demonstrates how groundwater behaves.
Catherine Finn works at the Harvard office of the not-for-profit North Saskatchewan River Basin Council. Her specialty is source water protection. She visits many schools and community groups sharing on protecting our water.
The decisions we make have an impact on what ends up in the water. So there were a number of health issues in the past that were a big catalyst in the development of source water protection planning.
Finn has been with the NSRBC for 10 years. She takes this water model out to community groups.
So in well number 2, it's an abandoned well and some contamination has gotten right into the aquifer. And over here at well number 5, as water is drawn up through the well, it sucks the contamination towards itself. So the people using this well are now impacted by the contaminants from the abandoned well.
Finn connects water quality to land usage. The goal is to make water safer even before it gets to the treatment plant. She says there are different risks connected to where we get our water.
When we talk about ag plastics or even waste management on the farm, a lot of people have their own private dump site in the back 40, or they dump their used motor oil or just stack up batteries or stack up scrap metal. It's a very common practice. But what we don't realize is that those materials become available and they can leach down through the ground into the groundwater.
Many people rely on their groundwater for their drinking water needs, so there are consequences and risks to our health, even from simply the location of the kitchen garden and the proximity of waste disposal.
Those have been past practices, but there's a lot we can do as far as improving that and making sure that we protect our groundwater sources and surface water for our kids and their kids for the future.
Time now to roll our events calendar. If you want to get in on this part of the show, just email me, glampow@newcap.ca. Let's have a look. When we come back, we have a chat with the boss lady of the National Cattle Feeders Association. Do stay with us.
This segment of Ag Life is brought to you by Webb's Machinery. Webb's Machinery, your New Holland dealer in Vermilion, Vegreville, and Lamont.
Here's a story about women breaking the glass ceiling in agriculture. I chat with someone who's at the helm both provincially and coast to coast to coast.
I think girls could work on a feedlot.
It's about government relations. It's about competitiveness and regulatory.
Janice Strandberg has worked the spectrum from private, not-for-profit to government. She was an assistant deputy minister of agriculture in Saskatchewan. She has always been on the crop side. In the fall, she moved with her family from Saskatoon to Calgary to head up the Alberta Cattle Feeders Association as well as the National Cattle Feeders.
When you take a look at the issues on a macro level, it's all about market access and trade.
Tranberg credits the staff that's helping her in this transition, even as she's breaking the glass ceiling for women.
Agriculture is maybe one where there haven't been a lot of women at the leadership level. And my experience, I've certainly seen that change from when I started. I remember going to meetings and you could literally count the number of women in a meeting, and now it's not so obvious that there's a difference.
Tranberg is happy to be a part of the change. As of 2016, nearly 29% of farm operators across Canada were women, and as of 2017, some 14% of Ag Board members were women. Her background in communications and market development is another key asset.
In my past lives, working in the crop sector, it was always a technology, or with canola, it was a canola oil that's an ingredient used. But now we actually have beef. So this is something that you can taste and you can smell and you can touch and you can eat.
Tranberg is keen on meeting stakeholders even as she faces the contentious issues, especially around consumer perceptions.
So now the issues more are hormones and antibiotics. So while the specifics again have changed, how you talk to people doesn't change, and how you try to relate to people on those very touchy topics, that hasn't changed. So I bring some experience coming forward in that, and I hope to be able to bring and use some of that experience.
Consumers need to know that there are withdrawal times on medications and that producers are conscientious about producing quality beef that's safe to eat.
I think that we have some pretty major battles out there, and public trust is certainly one of them.
One of the ways to bridge the gap is visiting a farm.
The one thing I've already seen with my members is that they're very open to bringing people onto their farm. They actually encourage it. So, that will certainly be something that we'll be working on moving forward.
Tranberg speaks of Canada's natural advantage as cattle feeders seek to grow their markets.
The long-term vision is going to be, how do we maximize that for Alberta and for Canada? How do we ensure that we can get our products to market, and that other markets are open to us. And certainly we have some opportunities now around the CPTPP.
Saskatchewan producers can now access a tax credit on capital costs for value-added facilities. I find out how this government incentive aims to attract foreign investment. Whether shovels hit the ground for construction or expansion of value-added ag processing facilities, producers having that entrepreneurial talent can benefit from a 15% tax credit on capital costs. The Saskatchewan government has a fresh take on fostering downstream ag industries.
The Saskatchewan Value-Added Agriculture Incentive is an incentive for producers who get a 15% capital income tax reduction on value-added production facilities in Saskatchewan, used either in new or existing facilities.
Producers with projects meeting the minimum criteria of $10 million could benefit from the application process.
We help them connect them both with either industrial parks or developers who have more of the information on what land's available. We help them connect them maybe with Crown corporations like SAS Power and Transgas to get more information on hookups, but we work with our colleagues over at Agriculture who might have more resources available for them to utilize.
Westgard points out agriculture is a leading contributor to GDP and exports, so value-added processing is a foot in to growing the economy.
Saskatchewan has a lot to offer. We do a great job in growing the product, and now we're going to try to diversify the economy, adding jobs and investment into the rural areas and urban areas of Saskatchewan to see more value-added processing, such as pea processing, oat milling, malt producers and canola oil.
To qualify, producers need to show that capital expenditures were made to develop new production or expand existing operations. Once the facility is running, the benefit is at 20% in year 1, 30% in year 2, and 50% in year 3. Westgard sees the New Deal as developing other areas like pea protein, cannabis, or even waste byproducts into a new commodity. It mirrors the success story of canola.
The idea for the tax incentives is to get into new areas which we historically haven't been processing in. We've done a great job in canola, but we know there's more raw product in Saskatchewan that can be value-added processed.
Applications are being accepted over the next 4 years up to December 31st, 2022. And a new industry partner is on board to tell us all about License to Farm. If you've never seen it, you're going to want to stick around for this, coming up after the break. Welcome back. So an interesting backstory now. Janice Tranberg, who's now heading up the National Cattle Feeders, she was one of the live wires behind this next segment when she was at Sask Canola. So with numerous battles going on in the world of agriculture, let's have a look at this next feature which tackles some of these hot button topics. Courtesy of Sask Canola, here's License to Farm.
The family farm, a tradition in Canada going back 200 years. This canola farm has been in the family for 3 generations. Today's farmers face the same challenges as their forefathers: weather, soil fertility, pests, commodity prices. But today's farm is radically different from the romantic ideal. Today's farm is a vast and complex enterprise employing cutting-edge technology. From breakthroughs in genetics, communications, and chemistry, we grow our food more quickly, with less energy, less environmental impact, and in greater abundance than ever before. In fact, no society in history has enjoyed the variety and abundance of food that Canadians now have. But farmers face a new challenge. Consumers and activist groups have called into question: has technology made our food different? Is our food safe?
Farming, as many people will automatically quickly say, is a very risky business. Weather is your biggest risk. Markets are there too, and they're related to weather in different parts of the world. But now we have a more significant risk, it seems like, is that there's a pushback from the public, from our customers, the consumer, who thinks that we're not doing things in a proper way.
We as producers rely on the consumer as our customer, and we want to produce the best, healthiest product we can.
Public fears about food safety are putting pressure on government and decision makers to restrict the approval of GM foods, like the oil from the canola grown here, and to ban the use of certain pesticides. Canada's food certification process is already one of the strictest in the world. But will it become so restrictive that farmers will lose their choice about how they manage their crops? Canadian farmers have never before faced a challenge of this magnitude.
I've tried to pay attention to what's happening in Europe and other parts of the world, and I've seen where farmers are more legislated, there's more regulation that is coming down, there's a lot of misinformation, and that worries me.
And so farmers are really facing questions about how they produce food, because it's such an important part of every family. How is it that this food comes to be on my plate, and is it safe?
The vast majority of the population is so far removed from agriculture that for the first time ever there's a huge disconnect. Their conceptions are still stuck in the 1940s, 1950s. They're still stuck in the mom and pop, really small farm, and a lot of things have changed since then.
These days, when there's so much controversy about many nutritional issues and many farming issues, People are confused, they're bewildered, they don't know who to listen to.
They're researching those aspects of agriculture, but what they're finding isn't always true, isn't always scientific, and for the most part is not directly from the source.
There is money in the anti-farm movement. Someone's making money off it. They're selling an alternative, and farmers are paying the price.
A lot of the activists, who promote what I consider are illegitimate fears about our food, do it very well. You have to give them begrudging respect for their activism. They come out with very romanticized arguments, not scientifically based, but very, very compelling.
If farmers don't rise to the occasion and start telling their own stories and proactively sharing information about their farms, about their production practices, about their values, farmers are going to see increased legislations that aren't coming from a place of agronomy. They're not coming from a place of agriculture. They're going to be coming from politics. Farmers like my dad will be forced to change how they grow food.
In Europe would be a perfect example. They don't have the option to grow genetically modified seeds.
What kinds of regulations are going to be put into effect? The automakers have more influence than farmers do. So it's really important that we are able to explain to people what it is that we're doing and let them know just how safe their food is.
I'm a city girl and married a farmer, and we've been married for 29 years. And it's been a steady learning curve for me, learning what farming is all about. I think I've had questions about the safety of chemicals and how important it is to learn about those things, and that some of the things that are coming up on social media are not really based on science, and they really have no basis in fact, and that we just need to keep looking for answers.
In Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, growers from all over Western Canada have gathered for CropSphere. This year, one of the topics is about how farmers can talk to the public about food safety and explore 3 areas of public concern: genetically modified foods, agriculture's use of chemicals, and the idea that the small farm of yesteryear is gone, and food production has been taken over by megacorporations. They hope that farmers will be able to speak directly to the public about their farming practices, explain why they use certain technologies, and reassure the public that their food is safe.
And I believe the media wants to hear from farmers.
Okay, and I need a story that actually resonates with the consumer. Farmers can make these choices on their farm right now, but with every sort of added regulation or policy that gets put into place based on consumer concerns as opposed to scientific concerns, it's not necessarily going to always be the farmer's choice of how they operate.
If farmers don't stand up and speak out and become their own advocates and tell their own stories, this trend of other people telling their stories for them is going to continue, and it's going to grow exponentially.
If farmers don't take the opportunity to speak up about the decisions that we want to make, my fear is that we will lose that privilege.
Generations of farmers have struggled and prospered here, but the landscape has changed, and their biggest challenge yet still remains: standing up to dispel the myths about modern agriculture. Will Canadian farmers make themselves heard before it's too late? Or will they stay silent and lose their license to farm?
And we'll have Chapter 2 of License to Farm in our next episode of Ag Life. When we come back, top-notch farming is coming to the border city. Do stay with us.
Ag Life, presented by ADM Lloydminster.
The conference circuit is in full swing, so here's another conference as Saskanola is bringing top-notch farming to the border city.
And they both had pretty good...
This year we have two of the meetings which are right here in the Northwest, February 6th in Lloydminster and February 7th in North Battleford.
As the excitement of conference season continues to build, the Lloydminster exhibition is getting set to host Sask Canola for top-notch farming, and the first of their 6 meetings will be held in Lloydminster.
It's spearheaded by Sask Canola, and we're in partnership with Sask Barley, Saskatchewan Agriculture, and the Canola Council of Canada.
The hot-button issues are on the agenda.
We got Jonathan Driggers coming and doing a market outlook for the grain. And then we're very fortunate to have Murray Hartman come up and talk about crop rotations. The club root is always such a big topic across Alberta and Saskatchewan. So Clint Yerke will be covering how the spread of club root in Alberta. And then we have a speaker from Saskatchewan Agriculture, Aaron Campbell out of North Battleford, who will be speaking of the spread of club root in Saskatchewan.
Sask Barley is also on board to make a presentation to producers. Registration is free.
You could go to saskcanola.com for registration, and as well as there's a lunch included.
The conference circuit and events like Top-Notch Farming are great networking opportunities for producers.
This is a great one-day event to get some really good information that you can bring back to your farms.
That's a wrap on this edition of Ag Life. Of course, if you've got a comment, story, idea and such, we'd certainly love to hear from you farmers. Your voices need to be out there as we hear there in License to Farm. Follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram as well, or simply email us here at tvnews@newcap.ca. Once again, your input is certainly welcomed on part of the show. So that's where we leave it for this week. Thanks again for being with us. I'm Gerard Lampow. Do take care.